Okay, this video is about factors affecting the function of an ecosystem, and our goal is to explain or identify these factors and then explain how they affect the function of an ecosystem. So what we're looking at when we talk about a function of ecosystem is basically how an ecosystem works. It's how species interact together in an ecosystem, and therefore it means the movement of energy and nutrients. So last lesson we talked about trophic levels and the loss of energy. We talked about nutrient cycles, the carbon cycle, oxygen cycle, water cycle. So we're talking about how something works, and we're looking at what factors can affect that function of an ecosystem. So here are some examples. I've got here out of Earth factors. So these are outside anything we can do. We're talking about the movement of Earth around the Sun. Sometimes the orbit around the Sun isn't equal, sometimes a little bit further, somewhere a little bit closer, and that affects obviously the climate as well of the Earth. So these things are really important, and also like the changes in movement of the Moon as well. It affects tides and so on. If the change in gravitational pull of the Earth changes from the Moon, then we're going to have different tides. And if you're an ecosystem that lives by the sea, you're going to see differences in sea levels. So you're going to have to change or adapt to that change. So they're really big Earth factors. Climate factors, as we know, sea levels have been higher, lower. These huge long-term changes obviously affect the function of the ecosystem. Natural disasters, these big, sudden, violent events really do affect the function of an ecosystem. At first, they might damage ecosystems, but in long term, they might make them stronger. So when we talk about natural disasters, we're talking about volcanoes, earthquakes, tsunamis, all of these things. And then of course living things. So within the ecosystem, when we're talking about population of species increasing, this might obviously affect the function of the ecosystem, because there might be too many of one particular species, which then impacts the food source. So a good example of that is in Queensland, where we have a lot of locusts that eat sugar cane. One year, because of the climate, it might be slightly warmer, which means there's going to be more locusts. However, the locust population will decrease over time, because more locusts, not enough food, locusts are going to come down naturally in population sizes. We've got migration changes as well, where certain birds, certain animal species that do migrate might change because of the climate. Then we've got adaptations. Obviously this takes time as well, so we're talking about some species that adapt to new food types or can adapt to being hunted. All animals have adaptations, and that again affects their function of the ecosystem. And then sadly, contact with humans. Hunting obviously can affect the function of an ecosystem. A good example is the extinction of wolves in particularly like Yellowstone National Park. It had a big impact. It increased the number of deers in Yellowstone National Park, and as a result, erosion increased because trees couldn't grow, because that's what the deer ate, and so on. And then the biggest problem is introduced species. Australia is full of introduced species that really impact the ecosystem. So there's some of the factors that affect the functioning of the ecosystem. Next lesson we'll look at, well, how can ecosystems work around those changes. Okay, thanks.